High above the French Alps, Germanwings Flight 9525 is in a rapid, unapproved descent. Air traffic controllers are broadcasting emergency calls into the void. Intercepting fighter jets pull up alongside the wings, trying to get the crew's attention, but the radio remains silent. The Airbus A320 is in perfect working order. The engines are firing, the hydraulics are functional, and the weather is clear. The crisis is isolated to the cockpit door, where Captain Patrick Sondenheimer is swinging a heavy metal crash axe against the reinforced panel, attempting to hack back into his own airplane. Inside that cockpit, First Officer Andreas Lubitz sits alone. He is conscious and active. He has commanded the autopilot to drop the aircraft from 38,000 feet down to just 100 feet, manually accelerating the plane toward the ground. Commercial aviation relies on the concept of redundancy. If a primary engine fails, a secondary one takes over. If a navigation computer glitches, an analog backup is waiting. Every critical system is engineered so that a single point of failure cannot bring down an aircraft. On March 24, 2015, the tragedy was a byproduct of the engineering success. The same security measures designed to protect the cockpit from external threats were the tools that prevented any intervention from the outside. After September 11th, the aviation industry hardened the flight deck. New mandates transformed the cockpit into a Kevlar-reinforced vault, engineered to withstand grenades, small arms fire, and blunt force. To control access to this vault, Airbus installed a toggle switch on the center console with 3 specific modes: normal, unlock, and lock. Engineers accounted for scenarios where the pilots inside might suffer a medical emergency. If the crew outside suspects incapacitation, they can type an emergency code into an exterior keypad. This triggers a 15-second countdown, after which the door automatically unlocks. This system has a hard-coded exception. If a pilot inside manually holds the interior switch in the lock position, it rejects the keypad signal. The countdown stops, and the door remains sealed for another 5 minutes. The system was focused on stopping an external hijacker. By giving the person in the pilot seat ultimate veto power over the lock, the design allowed one authorized individual to seize control of the entire aircraft. The man who held that switch, 27-year-old Andreas Lubitz, had a history of severe clinical depression. Before finishing Lufthansa's flight academy, he had been grounded and required a year of intensive psychiatric treatment. The regulatory system designed to catch these vulnerabilities relied on self-reporting. To maintain his commercial license, Lubitz checked a box on his annual medical evaluation, stating he had no active mental health issues. While his paperwork remained clean, Lubitz was seeing halos and flashes of light that made him fear he was going blind. He consulted over 40 doctors, including psychiatrists and neurologists. They diagnosed him with hypochondria and active psychosis, issuing multiple sick notes declaring him unfit for duty. If Lubitz submitted these notes, his flying career would end immediately. Without his pilot salary, he could not pay off his student loans. He hid the diagnoses from the airline and continued to fly. The act was premeditated. 4 days before the crash, his search history shows he spent hours studying the specific schematics and failsafes of the Airbus A320 door system. He even ran a rehearsal of the descent during the outbound flight to Barcelona, testing the autopilot settings while the captain was out of the room. Airlines spent billions engineering aircraft that can survive lightning strikes and engine failures. Yet the safety of the flight still hinges on a medical screening process that is easily bypassed. At 9:40 a.m., the automated terrain alarms blared through the cabin. The flight path never altered. Germanwings 9525 impacted the French Alps at over 400 miles per hour. When investigators recovered the flight recorders, they found no demands and no signs of panic. They heard the pounding of an axe, the screams of the passengers, and the steady breathing of one man until the recording ended. Aviation regulators quickly implemented a 2-person rule. If a pilot needed to leave the cockpit, a flight attendant had to step inside, ensuring no one was ever left alone behind the locked door. In the years since, several major aviation authorities have dropped the mandate, citing logistical difficulties and the rarity of pilot suicide. Many airlines have quietly returned to a single pilot cockpit when one person steps out. The reinforced doors remain effective at keeping external threats out. Yet the stigma around pilots seeking psychological help is still present, leaving the human element as aviation's greatest unresolved vulnerability.